Hey, it's Brax, and today I'm going to show you how to make some trip-hop drums. When I'm doing trip-hop or down-tempo stuff, I really like to keep things sounding super organic. So for my drums, I always start with BFD3. I have a whole bunch of presets that I made here, specifically for trip-hop, and then I usually pick one of those and then tweak things depending on the track. So in this case, I ended up using some different kit pieces from the 8-bit pack. I didn't use any of the electronic hits. They're just some of the more interesting acoustic hits here. So I started by programming a break in here, which sounds like this. That's without any processing on the overall drums. There's some default processing on some of the kit pieces that I loaded into my existing preset that I created here. So the kick has an EQ and a compressor, tube drive, and then the snare has got an envelope shaper. Normally, like if I just were to load up one of these kits, I don't put a ton of processing on any of the individual drum hits. The snare I'll usually use like a transient shaper or something. When I'm creating these kinds of drums, I pretty much use the same processing chain every time. So I've put together two different processing chains here. Trip-hop drum process and then trip-hop drum post. So process I use on the initial MIDI channel here with BFD3. So I'll go over that first. I'm just going to turn these on one by one and kind of go over them. Let me turn these off. So the first thing I put on here is an OTT, which kind of slams everything. I don't put it at 100% because it's just too exciting then. I don't know, anywhere between like 30 and 50% usually sounds good. And then I've got more compression here, so I just use the Ableton glue compressor for this. And I'm just looking for a few dB of reduction on that. Next I'm using Kilohertz Bit Crush. I have the mix down pretty low, so it's just adding some subtle lo-fi character to this. If I turn the mix up, it destroys the sound quite a bit. We don't want that. And then I'm using the SSL drum strip here. I'm just using the low frequency enhancer at 70 Hertz and just driving this a little bit, not too much. And I've got the transient shaper just up to 17%. I'm using this Listen mic compressor, but it's really low. It's not doing a whole lot. Then we've got a limiter on here just to catch any peaks. And then I've just got a utility, just setting everything to mono. Really don't like stereo width on my drums, so I like them to be really focused. Normally I work between like 80 and 100 BPM if I'm doing trip hop stuff, but the sound that I'm kind of going for today is kind of reminiscent of like Massive Attack. A lot of their songs are like halftime drums. Man Next Door, for example, I think is around 130 BPM, but the drums are halftime, so that's around 65. One of the key characteristics of trip hop drums is that they are time stretched, usually not using like modern time stretching algorithms, you know, Complex Pro or Beats. Usually it'll use like a repitch mode, and I'll go over that in a minute here. First, we kind of want to decide like what our target BPM is and then what we want to stretch this from. So if I want my drums to be at like 65 BPM, I probably want to increase the tempo from 65 by like, you know, anywhere from 30 to 50%. So I'm gonna set this to like 90. And then I've got a resampling track set up here. And we'll just resample this. So now if we put this to 65, let's hear how that sounds. So by default, Ableton warps using beats mode, which tries to preserve transients. It works a lot better if you are going the other direction and speeding something up, or using like a smaller change in tempo. This is pretty drastic, so you get a lot of artifacts. And we don't want that anyways. So with Complex Pro, it maintains the pitch, and you still get some artifacts, and it sounds kind of cool. I used this a lot on the EP I just finished. But again, we don't want that for this type of sound either. So what you want to choose is repitch. And this is like if you were to slow down the pitch on a deck or you know, a tape recorder or tape cassette, and it sounds pretty cool. Okay, so now we have our drums. We have another issue here. So I don't want to actually work at 65 BPM. I want to work at 130. But I also hate programming drums halftime. The grid just like fucks me up. I don't like it. If I just change the tempo, this is just going to warp to whatever the new tempo is. So if you're like me and hate programming things in halftime, set up another resampling track, and we'll resample this again. So now if we adjust the tempo back up to 130, we go into this clip and just turn warping off. That's just going to double the length of it, but it'll sound the same as this one. This next processing chain is a bit more subtle, so I'll show you how it sounds with everything enabled, and then I'll turn them off one by one and we'll just go through them here. The first thing I use here is the SSL 4KB channel strip. I basically throw one of these on every one of my tracks just because it gives me access to compression, EQ, and the channel fader. So I don't use Ableton's faders at all. They just kind of sit at 0. So I've just, you know, adjusted the level. I've cut a couple dB at 8,000 hertz with the high shelf. I've cut 2 dB at 3,000. I've cut 3 dB around 280 hertz, and then I've boosted the low end at 60 hertz just by 1 dB. And then I've also just rolled off the high end down to like 9,000. Then it's just compression. I've got this pushing pretty hard with a 4:1 ratio. And I'm also using this mic pre. It just adds a bit of character to the sound. And then I'm using another instance of OTT. This one's actually a bit lower than the one that I initially load before we resample. I'm using SSL Fusion Transformer. I honestly don't know exactly what this does, but I think it sounds better with it enabled. So, and then I'm using the SSL Vintage Drive. I've got the drive set to 7. The density's up at 7.8. Mix at around 68%, and then I've got auto gain enabled just to balance the level back out. Normally I don't put an EQ here. I just have a filter here because sometimes I automate this. In this case, I just, you know, kind of doubling up on the roll off of the high end here. But in this case, the snare also had a really annoying resonant frequency here. Oh, actually it's down here. That's this thing. So I've just dumped that by like 5 dB. You probably noticed that I've got this Kramer master tape. In both of these processing chains, it's just kind of there. Sometimes I use it, sometimes I don't. Sometimes I'll turn, you know, some other effect off and turn this on and tweak things. It kind of depends on the sound I'm going for and what drums I'm starting with. In this case, I don't really like what it's adding to the sound. Yeah, I'm not going to use it this time, but let's see how this sounds with everything together. So here I've got kind of glitchy string thing I used Portal on. I've got this swelling pad here that I just put together as simple chord progression. And then this kind of droning pad that just sits in the background. And then I have these spoken word vocals from back that I got a while ago. So let's hear how this sounds.
Do you think we'll ever meet in our dreams? I've met people in my dreams that I yearn